Hi, welcome. I'm Andrea Change with the Guild Literary Complex, and we are at the Justice Hotel at 6018 North Kenmore. Tonight, we are having an event in collaboration with Read Write Library. Read Write Library currently has a pop-up here at the Justice Hotel. Information is free. And tonight is about stories of the incarcerated. We will have four participants this evening. One person who we'll begin with is Velvet Rose Moore Owen. Sorry. A former corrections officer from the state of Wisconsin. She's currently working on a book called Incarcerated, a memoir. And we'll get sort of a nuanced perspective from what it's like working inside of a prison and some of the experience she had as being a woman of color, and also from the LGBT community inside that environment. Along with that, we'll have Brittany Roth, a representative from Black and Pink. Black and Pink is a LGBTQ open family support group for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated prisoners, helping them transition from prison back into the world. And she'll tell a little bit about herself and her story and the time that she spent in the Illinois correction system. Again, my name is Andrea Change with the Guild Literary Complex. Thank you everyone for coming out. If you give me a second, we'll start with Velvet and we'll talk a little bit with her, and she'll read a little bit from her, an excerpt from her book.
Chapter 1 is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? It's 1988, northern Wisconsin. It has only been a little over 24 years since the passing of the Civil Rights Act. And in those 20 years, the only black people who have made their way to Wichita, Wisconsin, were those sentenced to prison. That is, until a few black officers, including myself, arrived. "What are you doing out of your room?" bellowed from an unusually large woman walking in my direction. She looked to be in her mid to late 20s with a round, pale white face and brown hair that fell to her shoulders. At one point, she must have tried to feather it, but now it appeared to be losing its will to be held in place, just like an inmate might feel after too long of a stay, and it was pointing in several directions. She was wearing faded skin-tight jeans and a snug horizontal striped shirt that looked like it was way too small for her massive body. In this woman's prison, we were not required to wear uniforms. However, I knew she was an officer by the keys dangling from her belt loop on her hip. The hall was dimly lit and the corridor was long. She walked towards me, her feet falling heavily with each step. I could now see that there was a cold sore starting on the top of her upper lip. And as she grew closer, the rant became, "Did you not hear me? What the fuck are you doing out of your room?" Now, I had been told by the shift captain to report to this floor and sit at this desk and wait for an officer who would be providing on-the-job training. Wichita Correctional Institution was located in the small, unincorporated town of Wichita, Wisconsin. The total population of the town was roughly 300. This isolated facility had served as a reformatory back in the early 1900s and was surrounded by neighboring farms where most of the staff lived and worked. It was the only maximum security prison for women in Wisconsin. In my naivete, I looked around to see who this woman was screaming at. I thought maybe an inmate had escaped. My heart raced a bit, thinking something like that could happen on my very first night on the job. I'm like, wow. That exhilaration soon turned to dismay, though, when I realized she was yelling at me. I looked down at my attire. I had chosen this look deliberately. While we didn't wear uniforms, I imagined the officers I knew. They always looked sharp in their freshly pressed uniforms and crisp haircuts. I had chosen a really nice pair of dark blue jeans and a polo shirt for my first day on the job. And I knew I looked professional. Everything was new, clean, and pressed. I didn't understand how this woman could imagine me to be anyone but an officer. It was a little after 10 p.m., and the inmates were locked in their rooms. Most of the lights were turned off, with the exception of 2 small lamps, the stairway lighting, and 3 exit signs. I was still trying to process that this officer actually thought I was an inmate. Now this huge person was standing in front of me. I extended my hand to introduce myself and proudly told her, "I'm Officer Moore." She looked at my extended hand with agitation, dismissing it, while giving me an entire body once over. Finally, she said, "You can't be the new officer. You're black." I was startled by her words. I thought that perhaps I hadn't heard her right. I said, "Huh?" And looked at her quizzically. Without uttering another word to me, she took hold of the keys dangling from her belt, tossed them onto the desk, and without looking in my direction, she turned and walked away. I was left standing there on the 3rd floor Adams Hall, the most secure unit in the facility, with a set of keys, a flashlight that I found in one of the desk drawers which barely flashed a light, and 30 incarcerated women whom I knew nothing about. I was a little scared, but mostly shocked. I started looking around, paying close attention to detail. The building was awesome. It looked to be about 100 years old. It had the smell of mold and old paint. The hallway, lined with wooden baseboard trim and decorative hand-carved borders reminiscent of the era in which the building was built. But the walls had long ago been painted a dull green. It was depressing. There was a foul smell emanating from the janitor's closet next to the desk. It smelled of soiled linens and dirty mop heads, and I felt the sadness that seemed to hover over this place. Tap, tap, tap. A faint knock and shuffling noises were coming from the room across from the officer's desk where I was standing. Still staring at the keys on the large key ring in disbelief, I decided to grab the keys, not knowing what doors they were for, as I slowly moved closer to the room. Through this door's window, I could see a silhouette of a small woman who was pointing at the desk and whispering in a husky voice. "Hey, you see them clipboards? You gotta count us every hour, then put your initials on them. And you gotta do this every hour. Oh, and you see them binders over there? I'll tell you what you need to do for this job. Yo, what's your name? You the new officer? Damn, you go, girl. We ain't used to seeing no black people working around here. Girl, we need you. I'm glad you here. These motherfuckers ain't right. You know, you must be from Milwaukee." She said that all in one breath.
So, Velvet and I had a chance to talk a little bit before coming to the event. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to be a corrections officer?
Well, I never wanted to work in my life. I thought work was overrated. I was a basketball player. I got a scholarship out to college. I was playing professional basketball overseas, and got a call that my grandmother, who raised me and my brother, was dying of bladder cancer. My brother decided that he wanted to try something new that had just came out. It was called crack.
Oh.
And that's when crack hit the Midwest. And this was, and so I'm like, well, I went to school for criminal law. Back then, you couldn't have a degree in criminal law and become an architect like you can today. You can get a degree and do whatever. And so I applied with the police department, sheriff's department, corrections. Corrections called me first. And I needed to get a job right away to help my grandmother because he was stealing from her and she was barely eating. So I had to take care of my granny.
So what happened with your brother?
My brother ended up going in and out of the system about 6 or 7 times.
So he had been in prison?
Yes.
So was he in prison in Wisconsin?
Yes.
Oh, okay. But you never worked at the same prison that he was at?
No, no. You could never work in the same facility that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, the addiction was sort of the thing that happened to him.
He was addicted for 35 years.
So is your brother still around? Or?
My brother was murdered in 2017. That's why I'm back here in Chicago, because I had to attend his murderer's trial. And actually, he was murdered by his domestic partner. And it's in the news. My brother was stabbed over 100 times in his face and neck. I had to have a closed casket. However, when you read through the book, my brother helped me create a program for the Department of Corrections.
Okay.
Because every time he got out, he kept saying, Velvet, I don't know what to do. They're not setting me up for success. And so I had an opportunity was presented to me, where either I was going to own the Department of Corrections. You'll read all about that.
Well, you know what? Let's backtrack a little bit because I know you talked about this a little bit with me, and I know it comes out in the book. The reason why you read that first part of the book was because this sort of set the tone for the kind of bias that you would have, that you got while you were.
I endured for 28 and a half years.
So you were an officer for 28 years in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I retired.
Wow.
In 2016. And the day of my retirement, they were trying to make me work a double shift.
But so you were female, black, working in the prison system.
Female, black, lesbian, working in the prison system in Wisconsin.
Now, were you always at a women's prison or?
No, I only spent 3 years there, and then I transitioned to working with the men. And I worked with the men from 1991 until my retirement in 2016.
Maximum?
I worked maximum, medium, minimum back in 1991, and then the institution, because our lovely President Clinton decided to do a war on drugs thing, and mass incarceration started. And so you got people that were being convicted for, having a couple joints on them, being black, but if they were white, of course, they didn't even get probation if their parents had money for an attorney.
So how did the population change? Was it just by number or?
Not only was it by number, when I started in corrections in 1988, there were 10 correctional facilities throughout the state of Wisconsin. When I retired in June of 2016, there were 33 correctional facilities throughout the state.
So it doubled.
Almost tripled.
Wow.
And they're all full. And they're 90% people of color.
Wow.
And a lot of those people should not be in prison. And I fought. I fought even on my last day. And I'm still fighting.
So when you talk about the program was created because of the biases that you experienced while you were
the program I created, I was tired of seeing guys from my neighborhood. My neighborhood, I grew up in 53206. There's a documentary out. The zip code 53206 is the most incarcerated zip code in the United States of America. 53206. Most of the guys that I played basketball with, that I grew up with, that sat on the porch with my grandmother eating her homemade ice cream. The gangbangers that were on 19th Street that came up on the playground saying, yo, they playing ball. We're not going to mess up over there. We're not going to shoot over there. These same guys, I was never in a gang. I didn't care about that. They were people though. These were people that I grew up with. Right. These were my friends. Because when I saw them, I don't care if they was in prison. Yo, what's up? How you doing? How's the fam doing? Right. Always. I stayed true to who I am and who I was.
But you filed a lawsuit because of this.
I filed 2 lawsuits.
So.
And I won both of them.
And the program was because when you did the first lawsuit, there was a monetary award, but the second lawsuit was...
I didn't want the money.
Right.
I wanted to create a community service program so that guys that were getting out of prison, because the male population was higher than the women's population, that we could teach them job skills, get them connected with nonprofit organizations, show them that there were things out there for them. And my brother taught me that, because he said to me, he said, Velvet, I don't want to go back. He says, this is what you need to do. My brother told me what I needed to write, and I wrote it, and I submitted it.
What's your brother's name? You never said.
My brother's name is Gerald Moore. He was 52 years old when he was killed.
Oh, wow.
And he had just beat his addiction. And even though the guy who killed him said, we both were smoking crack that night, that's not true, because the toxicology reports came back. My brother was not using drugs. And not only that, my brother had his own apartment in Madison, Wisconsin. He had his own car. And the coroner even told me he had $700 in his sock. So if he's smoking crack, you don't have all that. And it was crazy because my birthday had just passed and he called me. And he was like, I see you, you're out with some of your friends. He said, Velvet, I'm going to call you on Saturday. And I'll never forget that knock on the door Saturday afternoon by the Cambridge, Massachusetts police. And it was one of those knocks that, thinking I'm about to get a raid in my place. It was like, thump, 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 thump. I went to the door, I'm like, I snatched the door, but it was a cop. I was like, did I run a red light or something? He was like, are you Velvet? I was like, yeah. He said, you have a brother named Gerald in Madison, Wisconsin? I was like, yeah, I do. He said, can I come in? I let him come in. He said, you need to sit down. I said, no, I'm good. And he said, he pulled out a number. He said, this is the coroner. I need for you to call Madison, Wisconsin. And I just fell to the ground. I don't know if you guys have heard of a group called Diverse and Resilient. It's the largest LGBTQ health organization in the state of Wisconsin. I sat on their board for a number of years and had given a lot of money for partnership with violence and stuff. And so they started a new initiative. So what I did, they reached out to me, with their condolences, and in return, the money that my brother had on him, I donated that money to Diverse and Resilient so they could have domestic violence. So that could help someone that what my brother was going through, and as a black man couldn't talk about, he could have a safe haven in the event someone's trying to fight him and hurt him, or someone else.
So there's some layers to your story, because the memoir, you're working as a corrections officer, but you're dealing with a relative
who's inside
dealing with this thing, and see that starts to
there are a bunch of layers.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot to this story. It's not just about you working in the prison. So you said something to me. What did you say? You said you felt like you were in jail.
I was incarcerated. And through writing this memoir, not only did it solidify the fact that I was in jail,
right,
but I also realized that I was in an abusive relationship. I was in an abusive relationship with the Wisconsin Department of Corrections. They were good to me, and things were good. We got a new superintendent, things were good. But when it was bad, I got written up, got, days off because I was insubordinate. Well, I'm not going to do something. I'm not going to be mean to somebody because you want me to be mean to somebody. I'm going to treat people the way that they should be treated and the way I would want to be treated in a similar circumstance. Just because I have power over them doesn't mean that I have to treat them any less than a human being. And so a lot of times I would get flack from supervisors because I was, quote, being too nice. I said, no, I'm treating them with dignity and respect. So they're human beings.
Give me an example of I don't say worst day, but a bad experience to sort of, because I mean you talk, because I feel like this is sort of something that's happening through you because you're there, and obviously you have a role in what's going on with the folks that are in jail and how their lives are being affected. But at the same time, it was impacting you.
This is how bad they were. All right, I'm gonna give you this one from, and this is in the book. I'm in the segregation area. The segregation area was pretty small, and there was this black inmate. I'm gonna change her name. I'm gonna make her Karen. So Karen was 8 months pregnant. She's in a one-person shower that is locked like a little cage. She's in there by herself, not bothering us all. The sergeant at the time, we'll call her Sergeant Miller. Sergeant Miller wanted her out of the shower. Karen is saying, I have cramps. Let me just sit down and get myself together real quick. Now, I'm not back there. There were no cameras. This is 1989. But we had an intercom that you could hear everything. The next thing you know, I hear shuffling noises and I hear Karen screaming, ah! Stop, stop, stop pulling my hair. There were 3 officers that were in the officer station with me. I jumped to go to the door to see what was going on. The other officers were like, nah, you can't go out there. I'm like, oh yeah, I am. So I ran out, came around, and I saw Sergeant Miller literally with both of her hands dragging this inmate, Karen, by her hair, who's 8 months pregnant, who hasn't done anything to anybody except wanting to sit down because she's 8 months pregnant, dragging her down the hallway by her hair. So I ran up and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? She's like, get out of here. You're not, this is the sergeant, Sergeant Miller. Get out of here. You're not supposed to be in here. I said, bullshit, let her go. So I grabbed the sergeant and I put her in a hole and I'm trying to move her. And then I've got this inmate who is crying saying, I'm suing you. And I got Miller like this now. And she's like, no, you're not. She's like, I got a witness. She's like, no, you're not. She's like, this nigger bitch ain't gonna say shit. I was like, oh, this nigger bitch gonna do more than that. So I picked her up and threw her. Once we got everything back together, I went back up in there and they told me, all the officers and the sergeant, if I said anything, that they're gonna be waiting for me in my car. I said, I guess you guys gonna be waiting for me by my car. And I said, I hope you're familiar with a Milwaukee ass whooping if you fucking touch my car. Now mind you, I'm 23 years old. I had no clue of what I had gotten myself into, but I knew what she did wasn't right. And I wasn't going to stand for it. And by the way, that inmate, Karen, did end up suing the state and she won.
How did you survive 28 years? Because I'm like,
I told you.
If I grab my boss, I get fired. So I'm curious how you survive.
Oh, she wrote me up. Okay. I ended up suing them right after that. I had a monkey affixed to my locker with a noose around his neck.
Oh.
With a sign that says, go back to Africa. My car was stuck in a ditch. I drove 63 miles one way to go to work. My car was stuck in a ditch. I ran a half a mile in a snowstorm to get to work on time. I came in at 6:02. The supervisor told me that she was writing me up because I was late. Yet I got white staff coming in behind me. And she's saying, oh, that's okay. I know weather is bad. But she's going to write me up. I was the only black there. But you're going to write me up. And she was like, go ahead, go ahead on up to your post. I turned around. I said, you know what, I'm sick. I need to go home. She's like, you look fine to me. I said, are you a medical doctor? I said, I told you I'm sick.
So why stay for 28 years?
Well, I didn't stay there. I stayed, and that's the question that my professor asked me. I stayed, number one, because nobody's going to tell me where I can work. You're not going to tell me what I can and cannot do. My grandmother raised me wherein I get to dictate what I do in my life.
How long was your grandmother around after you took the job?
She lived until September 1996.
So she was around for a while.
She was 94 years old. She was the one, and this is in the book. A situation happened, and I didn't talk about what would happen at work. When I got off work, I went straight to the playground. I played basketball from the time I got there until the lights came on until 10, 11 o'clock at night. And then that was my release. And I still play basketball. Matter of fact, my ankle is killing me right now because I just played with a bunch of teenagers the other day. And I keep thinking I'm 25 and my body's like, no, you need to really sit this down. But that was my outlet. So in answering your question, I stayed because they didn't want me there. I stayed because I needed to make a difference.
So where's the book? Where are you with the book right now? So I know
It's in its third draft. So usually it takes 4 drafts before it goes to publication. I have a wonderful editor. I took a class at Harvard Extension School on the campus of Harvard in Cambridge, and this particular professor liked this story, and I was angry when I started writing this stuff. I was angry. I was diagnosed with PTSD as well in 2015.
I can imagine 28 years.
But I wasn't gonna let them break me. I said, I'm gonna do this time my way. And so I did. And when I walked out of there, actually I left in May because I had sabbatical time. And they were like, oh, you can continue to work. You know, you can get a check at the end. I'm like, nah, I'm done. That's exactly what I did.
So when can we expect the book?
Spring 2020.
Oh, so we are close.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. I know I had a chance to sort of go through the chapter list, but there are other themes in the book. I know you talk about your brother, you talk about being in jail, but something else occurred while you were sort of going through this process. We were talking about how you sort of discovered something about yourself.
Yeah, I was actually accused of having an affair with an inmate, and that's when my grandmother took a cab from Milwaukee, Wisconsin up to Tachita. Little did I know she had a shotgun with her. She was going to shoot whomever, I guess. And her and the cab driver actually talked her out of it. And they became friends. I mean, he spoke at her funeral. I mean, and she kept saying, you know, my Indian boyfriend. But anyway, yeah, so I was accused of having an affair with an inmate, but I had a boyfriend that I had dated for like 10 years at home. And I didn't even know I was gay. I mean, I discovered it later on. But I was gone from that prison. I wasn't even at that prison. I wasn't at the women's prison when I discovered that, you know, that I was a lesbian. So that was kind of interesting too. So.
Right. That's sort of.
And I had an inmate save my life too.
An inmate save your life.
An inmate. He was a lieutenant in one of the largest gangs. He saved my life. Yes, I passed out at work. It was third shift. I hit my head on a glass window and split my head open. And he couldn't find my officer because I was a sergeant then. And he came up and he hit the panic button and he kept all in. It was a medium security, so inmates could come and go, out of their rooms, and he kept everybody away from me. And when the team responded, they're like, well, where's the sergeant? And he said, she's unconscious right here. Mm-hmm. And the cameras showed everything that he did, how he told everybody, you stay there. He was like, no, Miss Moore, cool. She's looked out for us. And it's kind of crazy because, I used to call him Big Worm because he had this big perm. And so, I wouldn't let the other guys hear it though. When I walked past him, I'd be like, what's up, Big Worm? He was like, oh, Sarge, you're wrong. And he was in there for first degree homicide. But back then, it was only like 13 years and 4 months or something like that. And so I knew he'd be getting out, in a couple of years. And it's kind of crazy because when he did get out, he found me at the correctional place that I retired from. Oh. I helped him get a job. He stayed out. He got married. He had kids, and he brought his whole family to come and see me. Oh, wow. He stayed in my life until he actually died of a heart attack 2 years ago. I told him that I was writing this book, and I'm just sorry that he's not here because he's also mentioned in the book, and he was an awesome guy, just an awesome man. So,
well, I'm looking forward to the book, and I know there's more to the story because there's like a lot of layers.
Yeah,
everybody didn't have that same experience with correction officers, so you sort of got this sort of officer-friendly vibe right now. But I know that it was tough.
Yeah, it was. I mean, all I did was I did my job. I didn't go above, in terms of whatever the policies were. I followed those policies. Did I break the rules sometimes? Depends on what needed to be done. If it was something positive, but I didn't believe in, even like with some of our transgender inmates, I didn't allow people to mess with them. No. You're not gonna do that. I'll write you up before you say something inappropriate to one of them. Because they have feelings. And they're in the wrong prison anyway. Mm-hmm. So, you know what, if you don't have nothing nice to say, scuttle on.
Doesn't mean stuff didn't happen, it just meant didn't happen on your watch.
Right. No, I'm sure. I mean, even at the women's prison, women were showing up pregnant that had been incarcerated for 4 or 5 years, and there were no conjugal visits, so somebody was impregnating them. Mm.
Well, that's interesting. Like I said, I'm looking forward to the book. Hopefully, in spring 2020, you'll look up the Guild and
I will.
More of these conversations.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna give a shout out to the Guild. One of the things that we wanted to do with this event, and this is sort of part of an inaugural series that we call Press Room. And the goal of Press Room is to take those stories that are out there in the media and put a real life spin on it. So Press Room is taking our stories back, what's happening in real life, real stories from real people. So as part of this process, I had a chance to meet this next person from Black and Pink at a dinner. And, Brittany, if you want to come up, I would just love to chat with you. So I feel like Dick Cavett is such a throwback reference. So, Jay Leno. Brittany Roth.
Brittany Rothy, but
Rothy. Okay, I pronounced it incorrectly, so I apologize.
That's okay.
So, but I met Brittany, and we were talking on the phone, and I was just like, I said that, and this was my experience. So, and I don't know how to impress it. You come into this room with a bunch of unknowns. These were people who didn't look like me necessarily, and but because of G and the Justice Hotel, it was like, come on, sit down, have dinner. Here's some pad thai. Here's this. And I was just like, okay. But there's this person across from me with a mustache in a woman's dress. And then this other person. And they were all going around introducing themselves and giving their pronouns. And I thought, this is, I'm out of my element, but I'm going to be open to this experience. And right away, I felt like I started interviewing everybody because I was like asking all these questions, but I really was like interested in knowing more about this. So there were what, 3 people in the room who had been incarcerated. There was Kat, there was Strawberry, and there was you. And Brittany was amazing because she just told her story. And when I walked away from it, I said, I feel like an infant because I don't know anything. And I said this to you. We talk about the idea of privilege, but privilege is not based on race. Me being born a woman and identifying as female, and the world acknowledging that, I have all this privilege. And then there's the other side of that coin. One of the other people that I met was Charlie, who was amazing. Charlie, he couldn't have been more than 20 something. He's young.
Charlie's in his 20s, yes.
But Charlie was, it looked like he hadn't shaved in a couple days. But he had on his red dress and he had patted himself. And I jokingly said to him, I said, if you're going to choose to be a woman, I said, I'm glad you chose to be a plus-size woman. That gives me a nice compliment. So he had all big boobs and big booty and all that old thing. But I started talking to Charlie, and he said, he told me that he was autistic. And I said, where are you on the spectrum? And he told me, really intelligent kid. And then he said, and I'm homeless. And I was like, what? And, you know, it hadn't even occurred to me that he would also be homeless. Because you think that we're, you know, and I said, you're really brave. And I said, I know that sounds trite. I said, but it's really brave for you to choose to live your life this way, knowing that it's going to be hard, knowing all the challenges you face. And I really was like, and my first instinct was, come to my house and you can take a shower and blah, blah, blah. But I was like, I got 2 dogs and somebody else on my sofa already, so I couldn't just invite him over and take care of him like he needed to be taken care of. And that's the first thing I walked away with, was like, what can I do? But the what can I do part was let other people hear your story. So you were in jail.
I was. I did quite a bit of time in the Department of Corrections, Illinois.
How long were you in jail?
I did a total of 26 years in the prison system.
So can I ask what you're in jail for?
Attempted murder and armed robbery. They charged me for the attempted murder because I was with a guy that I was madly in love with. I was young, and I came home and I caught him in bed with another woman, a cis woman, which is a natural born woman, and I lost it, and I snapped out, and crime of passion, but court didn't see it that way. I cut him up pretty bad. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm glad he lived, but they charged me for the attempted murder for that.
Even though you were the one who called the police.
Yeah.
They called the ambulance to save
her. I did. He could have died, but I didn't want him to go that far. It just, I love the guy. I just wanted to teach him a lesson. After, I didn't intend for it to go like that, but then when my emotions got the worst of me, they took control, and I had been on hormone replacement therapy anyway, just started, and the estrogen on top of everything just sent me into a spiral loop. And then they charged me for the armed robbery because I took his car instead of my car when I left the scene. But I took him to the hospital as well in that car, and saved his life. And I'm glad he lived. I'm sure he's probably the best guy to whoever he's with today. But it cost me many years of my life in prison.
So when you went to jail, you were incarcerated in a men's jail?
Yes, back then, yeah. I was. Today it's a little bit different once a person is diagnosed with gender dysphoria, but back then it wasn't that way. And I had started off in the Joliet Correctional Center, which is now closed, and I was white, and the place was predominantly black and run by gangbangers. The state didn't have any control over the prison system, and I went through some really hard deals. And my second day there, I got raped by 3 guys at one time, and
What happened?
well, I remember when they pulled me into the cell, and they threw me down on the concrete. They put a shank, which is a homemade weapon, to my face. That's how I got the scar. And they told me if I screamed or yelled, that they would kill me, and I could taste my blood in my mouth. And they all took the turns on me, and I remember thinking, damn, all they had to do was ask. But I remember leaving, and I was hurting, and I walked outstairs because breakfast was like around 9 o'clock. And I told my counselor, I said, I just got raped. And he said, this is prison, that's going to happen. And so he's like, we can send you to med, and you can get fixed up there. So I went to medical, and they patched me up. And
But you were in med for a few weeks after that.
yeah, they put me in protected custody, and this is, of course, was before PREA was established, which stands for Prison Rape Elimination Act. So before any of that, people like me were definitely prey, and because of my crime and my time, I had to start off in maximum security. And you got to remember, I was young. I was like 19, 150 pounds, long blonde hair back then, and I was dumb and ignorant to the prison scene. To be honest, when I got there, I was like, ooh, that's bad. Okay, I got to be here. Okay. But my whole thing turned after that situation. But I think it just made me stronger. I don't hate a group of people for what happened to me. I love people, in fact. To this day, I'm an advocate, especially for my LGBTQ brothers and sisters, and a little bit more biased to the transgender population. But no one is to blame except for the people that did it, for those 3 people. I don't even know who they were. I don't know anything about it. I just know that I suffer from PTSD from it.
But you didn't end up in a maximum security. You ended up in a...
I ended up going through the levels from maximum to medium to low medium. Yeah. I worked my way to...
But you had to sue the state to get...
Yeah, I was a part of a class action lawsuit. First, they tried to deny me HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and I'd already been diagnosed by a psychiatrist and a therapist with gender dysphoria, which means I just don't believe I am the sex that I was born with. To me, this is not a choice. I've always known I was a girl. When my brothers were going to baseball and football practice with my dad, I'm going to bird fairs and Tupperware parties with my mom. I'm making mud pies with the neighborhood girls. Trying to wear boys' clothes and going to school was just like asinine. I just couldn't do it. But as soon as I could wear some makeup and put on a pair of stilettos, I was all ready. I was ready to face the world. Yeah.
Well, so you ended up in a minimum security... Medium security women's prison.
No, not men's prison.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the fight had just recently, in the last 6 months, matter of fact, a friend of mine, Strawberry, she was the first trans woman to be transferred from a male facility to an all-female facility. And of course, we're all part of one of the lawsuits. We're part of the same lawsuit, but she has a few other ones, because where I was more frightened to come forward in situations that had happened to me, she wasn't. Being a woman.
And Strawberry's big. Strawberry's like this.
Yeah, that's my girl, and I love her to death. I advocated a lot for her until her release. I was working for a social service agency, and I was on the phone with Springfield, the state capital, advocating for her. I'm with Black and Pink, and we believe in prison abolishment and advocating for those who can't advocate for themselves. And I was very adamant and working hard for these people by not just calling Springfield, but health department and other agencies where they could be talked to and address their cares, that what they need when they were denied any kind of, whether it's hormone replacement therapy or any kind of mental, somebody with respiratory problems, they're not being treated right because of their identity, their sexual identity.
So tell me about Black and Pink.
Black and Pink, Black and Pink, of course, I'm with the Chicago chapter. We are a nationwide organization. We believe in equality for everyone of the LGBTQ community, mainly for those that are inside that can't fight for themselves. When I say fight for themselves, meaning not like physically fighting, but when a situation is addressed to regular offenders or non-gay offenders or non-trans offenders, right, where they're given leeway and they can do all kinds of different things, where people of the LGBTQ community were, placed in segregation or in isolation or written up for minor offenses and being discriminated against. So Black and Pink comes into it to the effect where we advocate for them by doing the legal matters. We write the Justice Department. We get lawyers there's nonprofit lawyers that get involved with these cases. We find pen pals for offenders. We have the working groups for the reentry group, which helps an offender getting ready to come out of prison and leaving prison and coming to the streets. The reentry group provides like gift cards for Walmart, Aldi's. There's food, just other food banks that contribute to them.
They'll be fun housing too, right?
Yes, they find them. Yeah, definitely. Mostly in the immediate thing, an offender, if they have no place to go, one of the members of Black and Pink will afford them their place of residence for at least a month until the offender can get on their feet. And this is in their own private home settings. They don't know anything about the person coming out except minor details, but they're willing to share their home with them. And while this is going on, the person who is no longer an offender, but a formerly incarcerated member of Black and Pink now, is given the resources that given by, like, Chicago House is a great resource for the LGBTQ community, especially the persons that coming out from prison.
But you found Black and Pink because
I found Black and Pink because I was inside and I was lonely and I was tired of dealing with these cranky ass men that I was involved with. I wanted some positive role models, some goodness, instead of somebody slipping me a kite over the shower at night saying, "Don't go to chow, we're gonna fuck." And no, we're not gonna fuck. Well, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. But and so a friend of mine had told me, it's like, he gave me some different pamphlets for different organizations for pen pals. And Black and Pink was one of them. And my boyfriend at the time was Black, and of course I love pink, so I'll just pick this one, Right. So I wrote Black and Pink, and Black and Pink sent me a letter with an information packet stating what I would like, who I would want to write me, what my interests are, things like that. And like instantly within 3 weeks, I had 2 pen pals, one from Rhode Island and one from Connecticut. But this is going through the Chicago chapter. So I didn't know how all of the processes were going through, not until I got released and I started working with Black and Pink as a formerly incarcerated person. But I found these pen pals, and I stayed in contact with them all the way up until my release, and I'm still in contact with them today. I'm too busy to get on a plane and fly out east, but we call and we talk.
Are they still in jail or?
No, they're not in jail.
So these are just people.
They're just people that the reentry group, pen pal support team, they get together and they do what they call matching. They go through a bunch of envelopes. They'll get 20 or 30 people together in a room like this, and they'll go through all these different these envelopes and saying, read them, see if you want to write this person, blah, blah, blah. So all these people, majority of them has never been to prison, never been incarcerated, never been in trouble, but they went to, in the loneliness, you know, they know that people are people, as you know, and prison, you know, there's so many people around, it's lonely, it's very lonely, it's scary, but we find pen pals for them, and that's what they did for me. And without that, my last few years in prison, I don't know, it would have been different. The outcome would have been different for me had it not been for Black and Pink, because as soon as I got out, Black and Pink was the first place I went. You know, I had nowhere to go when I got out.
How long you been out, by the way?
I got out June of last year. Yeah, June of 2018. And I had nowhere to go, and I went to a women's shelter here in Chicago on the north side, because that was the only place that would take me. They weren't going to send me to a men's shelter. They just weren't going to do it. And there's no way I can live with men. I mean, I love men, but I'm scared of them, you know. But I love them, and it's crazy. But
You're really a woman now.
but while I was at the women's shelter, I got my life together, and I went to what they call, one of our working groups is fan mail. I started working with the fan mail group, where we do the processing of offender mail, finding pen pals. But most of the mail that was given to me was from the trans offenders, because I could definitely have empathy with their situation, and I knew how to address and forward their concerns to through the proper channels to where it needed to go. So from there, then I started working with the reentry group, and I'm not too much into that now, but I do more advocating for the offender that's inside now. They'll give me letters like, Brittany, this person is having problems with the not getting, I'm just going to say the HRT, the hormone replacement therapy. You know, so then that's when I get on the computer and I email the main doctor, and address the concerns and let them know who I am and who I represent. And most of the time, I'm not saying that it's taken care of, but it is looked at. You know, it's carried from that place to the main prison, and I get the feedback from them saying, oh yeah, my counselor called, and they said they're looking into it, or they say they can't do nothing about it, or whatever it is. But the thing is, we do our part to make sure the things are started, because if there's a if there's a paper trail, then there's no hiding from it. And the Uptown Law Center is one of the big law firms that's fighting for the LGBTQ and participating and leading the lawsuits against staff and the main Department of Corrections.
So now when you were in prison, because I remember you and Kat having this conversation, were you always able to get your mail?
No, a lot of times my mail was kept. Internal Affairs would keep it, and they would read it, fine print it, and then they would decide or not if it was appropriate for me to have, like our Black and Pink newsletter, that would get stopped, and a lot of like 4 prisons in this state were under scrutiny for keeping that. And the letters that I would get from like my boyfriend or something, like, it's mainly my boyfriend, they said it was inappropriate, but I don't understand why it was so inappropriate when a man or a woman can write her husband while he's in there, and they could talk about their romantic antics. But whenever somebody writes me and we talk about the things we have done, well, then it's like a sin, or it's inappropriate, or bad, not good form, or something like that. And they would come up with an excuse other than the real reason why I couldn't have it. They would try to say it was some kind of gang activity. Me and a gang, I'm a queen. I'm not a gangbanger. I do not do none of that shit, you know?
So wait, what'd you do? Because you were in there for a while. What'd you do every day? How you pass the time? Other than the other stuff.
Okay, I worked a job. they gave me a job. I worked in Building 9, which was in where all female staff were working, secretaries. I was the only one cleared to work in that building because being trans and identifying as a woman, they felt safe that I could work there. And of course, I consider myself a heterosexual woman, and I love men, and I had no intentions on, making a passive female employee, and they did, respectfully did the same to me. And
Did you take any classes or anything while you were there?
oh yeah, I ended up. I went to college. I got my associate's degree in general studies. I worked hard at that. I got my certificate in business management. I ran the transgender group, which was finally started after enough, bitching and complaining from me.
But you filed a lawsuit though, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, me and a few of the girls filed a lawsuit because we were just being treated with discrimination, hated against. I mean, I was doing sex work for officers. I mean, they would come and get me at 12:30 at night, like my cell, to have me go service another guy because this guy's family was PayPaling the COs, And in return, the COs were making sure I had commissary from the inmates. I had drugs. When I went to prison, I was an addict, and when I left prison, I was an addict. I had to get on the methadone clinic when I left the penitentiary because they kept me high, and thank you, but not thank you. But I went along with it because it was safe.
So they protected you. So, in order to get that protection, you had to do sex work.
Exactly. Yeah, they would get the money for it because I was the closest thing to the inmate population to a woman is what they were going to have, and I'm very feminine. I love my femininity. I love expressing who I am. I'm not a boy. Don't get it misconstrued. And I tell people that, they make, they throw little things at me like you still got a penis, and I'm like, that's just a handle to flip me over with. Don't worry about that. And the guys love me, and I did what I did to be comfortable and to be safe. Had I not did that, which I did in the beginning, then I would have fallen to the prey as the product as many of the other people who didn't fall under the act, where they would get written up for petty offenses, harassed. They would be, if they got beat up or raped or anything like that, well then little or nothing would happen. So after what happened to me when I first got in, I wasn't going to let that happen to me again. Mm-hmm. Whatever I was going to have to do to survive, I was going to do it. I was given a single person cell, so I didn't have to worry about having a male in there, making passes at me, harassing me. When it came to my shower time, the male offenders were locked up in their cells, then they would come and get me and let me out to take my shower. Like I said, I worked a full-time job, I went to school. I basically left the streets behind me because I couldn't concentrate on the streets because I had so much time to do. I wasn't going to make myself miserable by dwelling on something that
So they kept you high enough that you could function and you were able to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
So what's it like now? What's going on with you?
Okay, well,
Besides you being all cute, your little dress on.
Thank you. I know, girl. I love it. I love dressing up and
sparkly nails,
being sexy and being attractive. I do sex work. It's hard for me it's hard to get a job. I have a part-time job now, but I love sex. I love men, and it's easy for me to have a website, which I do, and I'm an escort is what I do, and people call me and we set up dates, and
But you've got your own place. You take care of yourself.
I got my own place. I pay my bills. That's what we have to do in society. We have to work. We have to pay bills. My job may not be ideal, but nobody's getting hurt. I'm paying my taxes. I'm paying my bills. I got a roof over my head. I got a warm bed. I got food in my refrigerator. And, you know, all I got to do is scroll down my phone and, you know, I can have a companion, you know. So things are tough, but I'll be damned if I go back to prison. I'm going to work hard to stay out. I don't think about going back to prison. I don't think about committing any crimes. I just know what I have to do to stay out. And I know I want to advocate for my sisters and brothers inside because their voices can't be heard, but their voices are heard because they're heard through me and people like me. Our numbers may not be like huge within Black and Pink, but we are few, but we are many and we are strong and we fight hard and we work hard for those people. And if it wasn't for Black and Pink, is still helping me today. They're helping me, they're paying for certain my storage fees when I don't have money to pay something, which is not often, but if I need them, they're there. I go to all the functions that I can. I represent Black and Pink and hold them in high regard because if it wasn't for Black and Pink, first giving me a pen pal, a second pen pal, and then coming out here and working with Black and Pink and being part of Black and Pink, to help other people inside, giving me a purpose. That's my purpose. That's what I believe. Yes, I am working. I have a legit part-time job too, but it's not enough, you know. So I do what I do to make my ends meet. I'm not high maintenance, but I like clothes. I like to look good. I like to eat. I like to feel good. And today's the longest I've been sober. I am on a methadone program. I haven't done any heroin in quite some time, but I know without the methadone, I know I would be back on the heroin. But I am weeding myself off of that too as we speak. But because of my length in prison and what I did to survive, I had to come out being an addict, and that's almost over. I mean, I'm always going to be an addict, but I'm not using, and I don't drink alcohol, but maybe a beer or something every now and then. But my vice was heroin, and I'm so glad that is no longer my vice, you know. My only vice is
Well, what you told was what your vice is.
yeah.
It's all right. Girls gotta take care of herself. Trust me.
But yeah, I love life. I don't scrutinize. I don't hate anybody. I mean, I probably wear this tattoo on my hand.
And what's the tattoo?
The tattoo has got IDOC with a gun tower burning down in flames behind it, burning down. So it's, you know,
IDOC.
IDOC, like burn, bitch, burn. Yeah.
What's IDOC?
Illinois Department of Corrections.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
And a girlfriend of mine who is with Black and Pink, she got one too, but she got it on her finger, so she could lift her finger like this. And she's never been in prison, but she's a member of Black and Pink, and
So now, Black and Pink, you don't have to be trans or a part of the LGBT.
you just have to be a person on the inside that is being treated unfairly. We believe in it, but there's other methods than prisons. I mean,
But you can work with Black and Pink to sort of, like, if somebody here wanted to be a pen pal.
yes, that would be easy. I mean, I could tell them where to go on Monday nights on Clark Street, where they could go through some mail and decide who they want to be a pen pal with. There, you can pick who you want. There is no like, oh, I don't want this one, or I got to have this person. No, you get to choose which person you want to write to. We usually try to keep it within state prisons, but we do some federal prisons. Federal prisons are a little bit different than a state facility, but anybody can get into Black and Pink, work with Black and Pink. They reintegrate the family.
You said they're having a Halloween party tonight.
Tonight, and that's the reason why I'm like the only one here from Black and Pink, because this is our annual Halloween party tonight, and I try to get some of my friends to come, you know, and like, you know, and believe me, and especially in the LGBTQ community, Halloween is like
Mardi Gras.
Christmas. Or
Yeah, I
something,
know.
You know, I mean,
It's a big holiday.
It is a big holiday, and as soon as I leave here tonight, I'm going to catch the train and head that way. But this is very important for me to be able to tell what has happened and what goes on being a trans woman in an all-male facility, and the things I had to do when I was there. It was hard, but I got used to the way of life. And then when I got out, it was, I've lived on the north side of Chicago, the south side, southeast side, the west side. People are like, you're going to ride the train at 4:30 in the morning? I'm like, why shouldn't I? But why are you going over there? It doesn't bother me. I mean, I get in where I fit in. I'm a people's person. I've been through the ghetto. I've lived in the heart. It doesn't matter. I've lived in a $350,000 house on the lake, and then I've also lived in a $200 a month boarding house on the east side of Chicago, where I'm the only white face. But you know what? It was great because people treat you how you want to be treated. I was the only white face getting on the bus at 79th Red Line, going east to 79th and Coles, and I had no problems with no persons.
Well, I'm sure you can handle yourself anyway. I said, sure you can handle yourself.
Without a doubt, yeah. Growing up, being the woman that I was, I got in quite a bit of fights, but I know how to talk to people.
Are you in touch with your family at all?
Well, I have a twin brother. He's doing life in prison.
Oh, wow.
He's down in Menard. And my mother and my father have passed. I have a brother in Kentucky. Nobody in the state. Nobody in Illinois. My family is black and pink. Yeah. They've been there for me.
They were the nicest people that I've met, and just like really, just sitting down at the table, I just remembered I was asking all these questions, and nobody was like, mind your business, bitch, what's your problem? They were just like real open and talkative, and I really appreciated that. So
great people.
Thank you, Brittany, for being here.
Thank you, honey.
So thanks to everybody for being here. Now that you had a chance to talk with Velvet, who is a former corrections officer from Wisconsin, and Brittany, who's transgender, formerly incarcerated in the Illinois prisons, I wanted to open it up so that everybody could have a part of the discussion and wanted to be a part of the conversation. So if you have a question for Brittany, or if you have a question for Velvet, now's the time to sort of do that. And so I'll open the floor by asking, what you didn't see on camera was Velvet and Brittany sharing a hug. And the reason why I thought that was interesting is because I was really worried about you two meeting. Because, when we talked initially, you were telling me all these experiences you have with COs. And so I was just like, immediately you're going to hate this person.
No, definitely not.
No, but I was like really happy with that. And then same thing, you come in with this perspective about prisoners, and that's not to say that that's your experience, because obviously you've been more open than most when it comes to dealing with prisoners. But certainly having these two opposing viewpoints, it was different. So I was really pleased, just like I said, because I was worried about that.
Actually, it's not opposing. I just, stumbled in on a career that I
That's true.
that I stayed with, but I still believed in, doing what's right, even when no one else was watching. So, and, unfortunately, Brittany, Brittany's not a bad person. I don't think that people who go to jail are bad people. Brittany made a bad decision, and that decision cost her freedom. But she's not a bad person. And most of the people that are incarcerated, from my experience, are not bad people. They've just made some bad decisions.
Agreed.
Yeah. So knowing that right now, I'm sort of opening up to the floor for anybody to have a question for Brittany and or Velvet. What do you want to ask?
So when you were in prison, did you got any abuse, like in prison?
When I was in prison, yeah, I was raped. I was raped twice when I was in prison. Once when I first got into prison, and then 3 years later, whenever I was in another facility, my cellmate raped me.
So was it to share a room with like everybody?
It was difficult because I identify as a woman and I do everything that a woman does. I sit down to pee. I wear long, like, skirty clothing. I did what I could do to wear the makeup that I could conjure up when I was in there. So when a man is in a cell with me, he automatically thinks that, first they get the misconception, they think because of I'm the way I am, that I just want to sleep with them, you know, which is so far from the truth. I'm a woman. That doesn't mean I want to suck every dick that comes my way, because it just doesn't happen that way. But
Whether you're a woman or a woman of choice.
of course, right, exactly.
Right.
You know, and I could afford to be picky and choosy, you know, but it was hard living with a man because, like I said, in those circumstances, being on a locked door, they just thought they could have their way with me, and they for a time after I was assaulted, they would screen the people before they would put them in a cell with me. They couldn't weigh more than me. They couldn't be a high aggression level. They couldn't be in a gang. There's a lot of criteria that they had to pass before they could live in a cell with me. But sometimes these inmates would fake the funk, basically, and lie and say they were none of this stuff just so they could get in a cell with me. Yeah, so it was difficult, but I just laid down the law. I just told them, you know, that I'm not into you, or you're coming in the cell with me, but don't think I'm going to fuck you, because we're not going to do that. I'll be cool with you. We're going to have to get along, and that's it. And most of the time that worked, because they would get scared that I would like go to the authorities and tell on them, and then they would get thrown in segregation or something like that. But then you had these bone crushers that didn't give a fuck, and that's unfortunately that happened to me with one of those guys, and I did report him, and he got dealt with for that.
So, any other questions for Velvet or Brittany?
So like, let's say if you got reported, like what kind of punishment you get in there?
The inmate or her?
The inmate.
What happened to him?
Like
He ended up getting 6 months across the board, which means he got 6 months in segregation, 6 months C grade, 6 months good time taken away, and he was transferred to a maximum security prison. And he had the label on him that he had raped another offender. And that's not a good look for anybody, especially raping a transgender woman. Inside, his gang got on him, and not only did he get punished by the department staff, but he also got punished by his organization as well. Yeah, I mean, like if I had gotten caught doing something with a guy, they would look at it as like me being a female, and I would get a lesser disciplinary than the male offender. If I got caught doing a consensual act, I would get like a month in seg, and I'd probably be released back into population.
Oh, no, you guys keep talking about segregation, so explain what that is to me.
Segregation is like the prison within the prison. It's like the jail within the jail. Yeah. It's when you screw up and you get in trouble. That's where your privileges are revoked and you're sent to a building where you're locked down for 24 hours a day, except for maybe 3 days a week. You get an hour out for a yard activity, a shower, but every other activity is stripped from you. No going to the mess hall, the chow hall, no walking, no going to the library, no working, nothing. You're in isolation.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty horrific. It's demoralizing. It's lonely and it's scary. Yeah.
So did you have to send people to seg? How often did that happen?
I worked in segregation, which that's where that one situation
happened with the
pregnant
one.
inmate.
Right.
I've worked it. I'm glad the laws and the rules have changed with regards to segregation. I don't think anybody needs to be by themselves. And in Wisconsin, it's You're in your room for 23 hours a day, and you come out for an hour, and in that hour you shower. They have like a little area where you can grab some books or something. You get a little bitty pencil that's about this big, like 3 pieces of paper or something to try to write somebody. I mean, it was ridiculous.
So now is segregation the same as solitary?
Mm-hmm.
It is, yes.
Okay, so it's a nice way of saying solitary.
Yes, it is.
It's okay. Got
Yeah,
it.
segregation, solitary, the whole.
Yeah.
The same thing.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So, because I was not equating the two, so.
That's why I said she was in that shower by herself.
Right.
Not bothering a soul.
Because she couldn't.
Right.
Wow. That's interesting. So, anybody else? Any other questions?
So what kind of things do you do to get put in solitary?
What kind of things do you do to get put in solitary
Yeah.
or segregation? Well, I mean, obviously, a crime against another inmate is one of them. So, what else?
Contraband, like during the time in which smoking was, you were still allowed to smoke in the prison system when I was working there. But if you got caught, like say they count out your cigarettes. So if you have 10 cigarettes in your room and they come back and they find out that you have 20 cigarettes in your room, that's additional contraband. So they feel like you're running an enterprise. So then they'll lock you up in segregation for that while they do an investigation.
Fighting would always get you put in segregation. Stepping on a line movement would get you thrown in segregation.
Stepping on a what?
Stepping on a line movement.
Oh.
Like when they would pair it up to march to the dining room to eat. And
Stay in a straight line.
yeah, stay in a straight line. If you'd step out of the line into the grass, trying to talk to somebody or something, yeah.
Wow.
They would.
Oh yeah.
They would cuff you up and take you to seg. Yeah.
Really? Now, was it you or was it Strawberry? Because I remember somebody saying that segregation for more than a certain amount of time was just like a really. It was, because I remember it was either you or Strawberry who said that being in segregation or solitary was torture at a certain point, after a certain point.
I mean, I think one day in solitary is torture. I mean, because you're stripped of everything. You're put into a small cell with a thin mattress by yourself. The food is always cold. You're in Illinois, it's a brown jumpsuit. You get the bare minimum of everything. You get a small little bar of soap to last you a week. You don't get nothing to clean your cells. The only time they clean your cells if you go out for yard once or twice a week. The porter will come in and clean it. And you can't talk to anybody. I mean, you can try to talk to the other offenders down the wing or down the walk by yelling through the doors. But the communication, trying not to talk to somebody is difficult. We do that. We're people. We talk with each other. Our Creator didn't mean us to be separate. You know, He wanted us to be together, to be social, and to be put in segregation. You're stripped of all of that. Any humanity, you're treated horrible. I mean, you're treated like you see these like animals. On commercials, where the animals are like being like starved. We're not being starved, but that kind of how they're feeling the loneliness, being treated bad.
So the loneliness is magnified.
Yes, it is. Oh man, I mean, because first of all, I love people. I love to run my mouth. I love talking.
No.
Yeah.
And whenever I'm stripped of that, whenever I can't talk, or I try even to talking to one of the COs, because I met some really good COs in there. I mean, I met some dickheads too, but I met some really good ones, and half the time they were scared to talk to me because they didn't want to get in trouble by their superiors, or they went. It's usually by their superiors. If they were like one-on-one, they would sneak something and give me some extra food or give me some decent conversation, because it was this. I mean, the chaplain would come by like once a week or something, and there's so many people back there, and segregation was always kept full because a person could go back there for the minor of offenses. And depending on the person, especially somebody like me, it could be the most simplest thing where a normal offender would get a slap on the wrist, But because I'm living as a woman, they're gonna lock me up because they're hating on me any motherfucking way, you know? No, get this bitch back there. Or they would call me a fag or something like that. I'm like, I ain't no fag. You know, I'm a woman. Don't get it fucking fucked up. You know, don't get it twisted. And I would speak up for myself, and that would get me thrown in SAG. Just because they didn't like what I had to say.
Strawberry must have been in there a lot.
Strawberry was in SAG a lot. Yes, she was.
She's got a big mouth.
Yes,
But I want to piggyback off of what you were saying. Being in solitary is like being incarcerated. I mean, it's like being, is the worst thing. But can you imagine being the only black working with a bunch of rural, backwoods white people that I worked in, and I was the only black working in this correctional facility, and every day they kept giving me or making the mistake that I was an inmate and that I should be in my room. Every day at work it was, I get stopped at the gate leaving. What are you doing down here? What the hell do you mean? What am I doing down here? I'm getting ready to go home.
How did I make it all this way? I'm just gonna walk out like I'm a.
And then, but yeah, most of it though was taunting. They were just messing with me because they knew I was an officer, but they wanted to kind of like keep me in my place. I mean, the sheriff used to sit at the end of the road and would drive me to the highway in Wisconsin where the prison was. They would make sure I got on the highway to go back to Milwaukee. And when I came into town, there would be a sheriff that would escort me and drive me from getting off the highway from Milwaukee, going up to the prison. So
that you recently learned that it was a sundowner town. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
you guys know what a sundowner town is? Sundowner town is, and there were still signs up that said, and I quote, "Niggers must be gone by 6 p.m. Yep, that's a sundowner town. And that meant that if you were caught in that town in the dark, you probably got to be hanging from a tree. They catch you. So I discovered that in writing my book.
And when was that? This was recently you're talking about.
1988. I started there in 1988.
So there's still a sundowner town.
It isn't, but the signs were still there.
Oh.
They were faded, but the signs were still there. And I try to remind people that, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, was passed. But we are literally talking about 24 years removed from the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and that was still going on.
Wisconsin is a challenging state. I will say that.
I mean, I became an instructor, after my lawsuits.
Right.
And I was the only black instructor for the whole state for 15 years. So one of the supervisors had called and said, "Hey, Velvet, we need you up in Chippewa Falls." I'm like, "Ugh, y'all got a plane for me?" I said, "That's a long drive. It's like 5 hours. And I'm still in Wisconsin." "Oh, well, we need to meet our quota." I said, "Well, then if you need to meet your quota, you need to, get more officers and sergeants who want to be instructors." And so I went up there, pulled up to the gas station. Now, Chippewa Falls is an Indian name, right? Chippewa. I see not one Native American. Not one. Yet I'm being followed around the gas station like I'm about to steal something. And my coworker, she comes in and she takes a case of beer and a carton of cigarettes. She walked right out the door. But they looking at me. She was white.
Wow.
Okay.
I know I had a lot of white officer hating me because I date primarily black men. I think black men are freaky and they pay me the most attention. So I'm going to hang with the people that give me the attention, So the hillbilly officer, oops, did I say that? Yeah, the redneck hillbilly officers hated me that was another reason I got a lot of scrutiny, was because I got called a nigger lover, and they told me to sit my white ass down. If they saw me on the streets, they would shoot me and stuff like that. I'm like, well, come to Chicago and say that, because you wouldn't go very far, and I love like going downtown and past the federal building, and DOC is transporting an inmate. We're flicking off the guards, and they're like shaking because they don't know how to deal with it, and it's funny because they think that while we're inside that we're not going to get out. Most of the offenders are going to be released, and like I said, Chicago with Cook County makes up 1/3 of the state's population, and if it wasn't for the majority of the offenders being from this area, those son of a bitches wouldn't have a job anyway, so they should be grateful. But
Real talk.
yeah, and I had to put up with a lot of that. But again, I don't care because I'm Brittany, and I'm going to be me, and I want to be real, and I'm going to date who I want to date, and I'm going to talk to who I want to talk to, and I never let none of that stop me from doing that. Even though a lot of them hated me for that, I don't care. Mother had them, mother fed them, mother fuck them. I was still going to be me.
So real. All right. Well, I know that there's a lot more that we can talk about, and if there's not any other questions, I want to thank Brittany, and I want to thank. Oh yeah, G.
So I was thinking both of you are, if I was thinking like there's this system there, right? Like one is being incarcerated, the other is trying to monitor the people in there.
I was treated as though I was incarcerated. I got a paycheck. I got a paycheck for, but yeah.
Yeah, also you both end up with having PTSD, and you both had 20-some years through the system. It feels like it's not benefiting like anybody, like who went through that like at all. Also, you said when you being released, you are not addicted to drugs, but now you do because of that system, and also being treated in this really inhumane way, which might not necessarily would happen to you when you are outside, right? I would just maybe this is I don't want this to be like a bigger question, but like I would just from your both of your perspective, like how do you understand the logic of the system? And you guys talking about like everyone need to follow the line. If you're like out of the line, then you're being like put into like a worst case. So like how do you guys describe the logic of that system is?
Well, the thing is we live in a system where when people commit a crime, Joe Q and Jane Q public get scared. They get frightened, and they don't know how to deal with it. So the society put in an organization called law, where we have to obey the law. And then when something happens against a person of the society or a group of the society, they want them to be dealt with. So prison was the thing that they came up with. And the people of the street want to be safe. They don't want to be frightened. They don't want to be scared. They want that person locked up. So that's where that comes into effect. All that is keeping the public safe, keeping the public not just safe from physical harm, but mental harm. Because as long as they can go to bed at night thinking that, okay, well, this person's locked up, we don't have nothing to worry about. That's all that is.
But I think maybe many people outside who are not in the prison don't want them to be treated in this like really inhuman way, and this are supposed to.
That's black and pink.
Yes.
Yeah. So I got a question for you, because you were in for a long time, and it was a crime, but obviously you weren't a threat to society.
No, I wasn't a threat to society.
So why did it take so long for you to be released?
Because I didn't have nowhere to go.
No, but I mean, why parole? Why was that given as an option for you?
Well, the state of Illinois doesn't have parole. You're given a certain a sentence, and then you have to do part of the sentence, and then you're released.
Oh.
Yeah. So if I had a 26-year sentence, I'd have to do at least half of that, unless the truth in sentencing law was in enforced in my case. Then I would have to do at least
I didn't know
85%.
Illinois didn't have a parole system.
No, Illinois has no parole. They have what they call MSR, which stands for mandatory supervised release. But they are working on trying to reestablish the prison review board. I mean, they got the prison review board, but to reestablish
A parole.
parole system in the state. They don't have one right now. No.
And Wisconsin's the same way as truth in sentencing. When I first started, they had parole and probation. And then lovely Scott Walker, who was trying to run for president.
Thank goodness.
And he was our governor for a number of years. He got rid of that and brought truth in sentencing. And what he did was he took some people that he turned people into monsters. Because when you don't have anything to live for, you don't have anything to look forward to, you don't have anything to lose. And that's a dangerous person. And it's just like I told, my bosses when I left that I was writing a book about everything that happened to me. And I said, I don't have anything to lose. I'm a dangerous person. I'm gonna be a dangerous person on this computer. So,
Amen to that. That's what
because
I
I'm telling everything that I wasn't able to tell before. I'm just regurgitating everything because I needed to be free. I mean, even though I got a chance to leave work and go home to have, time with my family and the whole nine, I was still incarcerated. I was still doing time.
You just got to go home every day.
Right. And my outlet could have been a lot like yours. I could have started using drugs. But I was already dealing with my brother and his issues. So I'm like, you know what? All that energy I had, I just play basketball. And on the weekends, I play 8-10 hours. Saturday and Sunday. I mean, I still play 3-4 hours today.
Yeah.
Are you good?
She played in the league overseas.
I play professionally. So I made a little money,
What's your position?
I was a shooting guard.
1v1. 1v1 me.
Huh?
1v1 me.
No.
1v1 me.
She good.
I know she's good, so I want to go against her. 1v1 me.
Oh.
Wait a minute. How much money you got?
Oh, he broke. He does not broke.
Oh.
I mean, it's crazy. People, especially when I was coming up, they ring the doorbell, it'd be like a bunch of guys at the door. So my grandmother was calling my brother, Jerry, your friends are here. He's like, oh no, Miss Moore. Well, we here for Velvet. She's like, what? Like, and my brother was like, oh yeah, I don't even go no more, cause they making money on the playgrounds. I mean, we would play like $200 or $300 games.
But you were playing before they established the WNBA.
Right. WNBA wasn't even around. I made more money than what the little 35,000 they making. Yeah, we made 6 figures overseas. So, and that allowed me to take care of my grandmother.
You go, girl.
So, I mean, I ain't got it now. I mean,
Yeah, but you did it.
Wait a minute, that was dead.
You did it, though, girl. You did it, honey.
Like, when you get out of jail, like, does it affect, like, your lifestyle? Or, like, your
I was never incarcerated. I worked in the prison,
And she
but
was
because
an
I was the
officer.
only black that worked there, they treated me, because I was black, they treated me like I was locked up. And that's why one of my chapters, chapter 4, it's called Nigga with Keys. And that's when I addressed the racism that I went through, because that's what they called me. And I had an inmate call me that. Unfortunately, this inmate, when she called me that, somehow she managed to fall, and she lost a couple of her teeth. But she never called me a nigger again. I just called her Miss Tucker. And she had a swastika on her forehead.
Oh, okay. That's something. Any other questions?
You
What?
sure you don't want to 1v1 me?
You guys could talk about that.
Yeah, we
later.
can talk about it later.
So, again, This has been a Guild Complex event with Read Write Library. Thank you, Justice Hotel, for hosting the event. This event is called Press Room, Real Stories Not from the Media, from Real People. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Velvet. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And good night.
Where